My name is Myra Summers, and for 19 years, I learned that love is not something you inherit, it's something you choose, over and over again, even when it costs you everything. But the day my son graduated high school, the day a crowded gymnasium held its breath and watched truth unfold, I learned something else. I learned that the truth has a voice. And when it finally speaks, it doesn't whisper. The first time my life split into a before and after, I was 22 years old. It was 2 o'clock in the morning when my phone rang. Not the casual, daylight kind of ringing, the urgent, wrong hour kind that instantly tightens your chest before you even answer. I remember sitting up in bed, staring at the screen, my heart already beating too fast. Mom flashed across it. I answered on the second ring. Come home, she said. No explanation. No greeting. Just that. I drove 40 minutes through darkness that felt thicker than usual, like the world itself was holding something back from me. When I walked into the house, everything was wrong. The kitchen light was on. My mother, Rita, sat at the table with a cup of tea she hadn't touched. My father stood by the refrigerator, arms crossed, staring at nothing. And upstairs, through the ceiling, I could hear my sister crying. Vanessa, 16 years old. Still a child. Still, someone I used to drive to dance class on Tuesdays and Thursdays because Mom said it would be good practice for when I had kids someday. I didn't know then how literal that statement would become. Mom didn't look at me when I sat down. She slid a piece of paper across the table. An ultrasound. For months. Vanessa had been pregnant for 4 months, and no one had said a word. Not even her. I remember gripping the edge of the table, trying to understand how something so enormous had been hidden inside silence. And then my mother spoke. Not about Vanessa. Not about the baby. Not about fear or pain or confusion. The neighbors cannot know. That was her first sentence. And in that moment, everything became clear. This wasn't about a child. This was about appearances. About reputation. About protecting something fragile and invisible called what people think. They talked about options like they were discussing furniture. Adoption, too risky, too public. Keeping the baby, impossible, because Vanessa had her whole life ahead of her. And then my mother stood up, walked to the closet, and came back holding a small, faded yellow blanket. She placed it in front of me. This was yours, she said. I touched it. Thin. Soft. Worn by time. And then she finally looked at me. You have to help. That was the moment. The exact second my life stopped belonging only to me. I wish I could tell you I made a brave, noble decision. That I stood up and said, yes, I'll do it. But that's not how it happened. I hesitated. I questioned. I asked what Vanessa wanted. And my mother dismissed it as if it didn't matter. She's a child, she said. But Vanessa wasn't just a child. She was sitting in the next room, crying into her sleeves, carrying something she didn't understand. And no one was asking her what she felt. Not really. When I finally looked at her, really looked, she whispered something so small it almost disappeared in the air. I just want to go away. That was it. Not, I want the baby. Not, I don't want the baby. Just, escape. And somehow, that became my answer. 2 weeks later, I said yes. Not out loud. Not dramatically. Just quietly over the phone. I'll take him. I withdrew from my master's program the next morning. I told myself it was temporary. That I could come back later. That life would wait. Life doesn't wait. It just changes direction. Dylan was born on a summer afternoon. July 14th. 3:17 p.m. 6 pounds, 9 ounces. And screaming like he had something to say. The room was full, but no one stepped forward. Vanessa turned away. My mother stayed still. The nurse looked at me. So I stepped in. I held him first. And when his tiny fingers wrapped around mine, something inside me shifted permanently. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just quietly. Like a door closing behind me. And another one is opening. The first year nearly broke me. That's not an exaggeration. It's not poetic. It's just true. Dylan cried every night for hours. I walked circles around my apartment until my legs felt like they didn't belong to me. I worked during the day. Survived at night. I ate standing up. slept in fragments, cried in silence so I wouldn't wake him. And once, just once, I called my mother and asked for help. Just one night, I said. Her response was immediate. You chose this. Figure it out. That was the last time I asked. Years passed. Not quickly. Not gently. But steadily. Dylan grew. He took his first steps between the coffee table and the couch, arms stretched wide like he was balancing on hope. He called me Ma before anything else. Short. Simple. Certain. He learned to read early. Asked questions I didn't always know how to answer. Trusted me anyway. And somewhere between sleepless nights and school mornings, something happened. He became mine. Not legally. Not biologically. But completely. When he was 8, he asked me something that changed everything again. Can I call you Mom? Just like that. No drama. No build-up. Just a question. And I broke in a way I hadn't in years. Because I realized something I had been too careful to say out loud. I had already been his mother. He had just finally said it. Time kept moving. It always does. Dylan grew into someone extraordinary. Not just smart. Not just kind. But aware. The kind of person who notices things others ignore. The kind of person who understands silence. When he was 13, I told him the truth. All of it. No sugarcoating. No blame. Just facts. He listened. Then he disappeared into his room for 2 days. When he came back, he said something I will never forget. I'm not angry at her. I'm just sad for her. That was the moment I realized. He didn't just inherit strength. He built it. 19 years. 19 birthdays. 19 Christmases. 19 years of showing up. And then, suddenly, she came back. Vanessa. With polished words. Carefully crafted messages. And a timing that felt less like love and more like convenience. She didn't ask who he was. She announced she was coming. To his graduation. With someone new. Someone important. Someone she wanted to impress. And she brought a cake. White frosting. Pink letters. Congratulations from your real mom. I saw it from 3 rows away. And I didn't react. Not because it didn't hurt. But because Dylan had already told me everything I needed to know with one look. Wait. So I did. When his name was called, the world narrowed. Everything else faded. And then he walked to the podium. And he spoke. At first, like everyone expected. Funny. Warm. Familiar. Then he stopped. Put his speech down. And told the truth. Not aggressively. Not bitterly. Just clearly. He told them about the woman who raised him. Who chose him. Who stayed. And then he said my name. Myra Summers is my mother. And the room stood up. Not for me. Not really. For the truth. Afterward, outside, everything unraveled. Vanessa demanded answers. Blame. Control. But Dylan didn't raise his voice. He didn't attack. He simply refused to pretend. You don't get to erase 19 years, he said. And, for the first time, she had nothing to say. Then he turned to me, reached into his pocket, and pulled out the yellow blanket. The one that started everything. The one that carried both of us through time. He placed it in my hands. It was always yours, Mom. And in that moment, there was no past. No conflict. No audience. Just us. Vanessa stood alone. My parents left without looking back. The cake stayed untouched. Because some things don't deserve celebration. That night, Dylan and I sat on the porch. Like we had so many times before. No speeches. No drama. Just quiet. You okay? I asked. He nodded. Yeah, I've been okay for a long time. And I believed him. Because I had seen him grow into that truth. People think big moments define a life. But they don't. They reveal it. The real story is in the small things. The showing up. The staying. The choosing. Every day. For 19 years. I never went back to the life I had planned. But I built something better. Something real. Something that stood in a gymnasium full of people and said, without hesitation, "This is my mother." And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.